What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. This is a channel where I talk about all of the things that I read, and today I am going to do my April monthly wrap-up, which is just a quick recap of all of the books that I've read, a couple of thoughts about each one, and how I felt about it, what I would rate it. My rating scale is an emotional based rating scale. I will tell you if I loved it, if I liked it, it was okay, or that's how I rate, because I'm a subjective reader. Everything that I read, I am going to interpret personally, and that's how I rate, is personally to me and my experience. So bear that in mind, but hopefully I can at least share some information about it that is enough for you to be able to tell if it might be one you're interested in picking up. Starting with the one right in front of me, which is the second book in the Button Box trilogy, Wendy's Magic Feather. This one was just written by Richard Chizmar. The other two in the series were co-authored by Stephen King. Now this one I liked a little more than I did the first book in the series. The first book in the series was middle of the road, but I was so curious about this button box that I was eager to go on. Now we didn't get hardly anything about the button box in this one either, but we did do some good character development on Wendy that I personally enjoyed. I am a character driven reader, so you give me some good development on a character, I'm gonna be happy. So it was marginally better. From what I've heard of the read-along that have already started the third book, that might be the worst one of the trilogy. We will find out very soon, as I'm planning to read that third and final book later this month. We'll just keep going in fantasy. I did read The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne, the second book in the Bloodsworn trilogy. Absolutely love it. I just ate this one up. It was just as good as, if not better than, the first book in the series. Although the first book in the series I absolutely loved, it's one of those that it's the first book in the series. You are introduced to all of the characters, a bunch of things happen that just endears it into your heart because it's the first book in a series that you feel that you're going to love the entire series. John Gwynne just never lets me down. This fantasy series just really embraces Norse mythology, and I'm loving how he is illustrating it, how he is bringing it to life in this story with these characters. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in the final book. I'm scared to death because I know John Gwynne, and he is not afraid to just wipe out everybody you care about in the worst way imaginable. And he'll tell you he's sorry, but then he adds that little winky face at the end that lets you know he's not sorry. No. That's just one man who is definitely not afraid to kill his babies, as they like to call it in the writing world. Continuing in fantasy, I read The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, the first book in the David Bond trilogy. This has been a long anticipated read for me. I did not think I was gonna like it, guys. This first book threw me for a loop. So when I stumbled into a little romance, it threw me, and I thought, oh man, is this what I'm gonna have to look forward to for the rest of this book? And I learned quickly. The reason why nobody ever talks about it, that flame of romance gets snuffed out really quickly, and we get down into the political aspect, the historical aspect of this world. I am loving the world building. I'm loving learning about the people. I love what the author did as far as the legend of the djinn, who they were and how they were made into the type of djinn that we've all grown up learning about in fairy tales. Absolutely loved it. I am currently in book 2, and it is even better. I think this is going to turn into a favorite series, even though I thought I was going to hate it at first. Next, we'll get into a little bit of a darker fantasy. I finished book 3 of The Lotlands by Jonathan French, The Free Bastards. Boy, was this a disappointment. I loved the first 2 books. This one was so boring. The character we follow in this one just is not compelling. He is not dynamic. He is not interesting. Is he lovable? Sure. I've always loved this character, but to have a story revolve around him and just his point of view, it wasn't good. I am disappointed in the end of The Lotlands by Jonathan French, and I really wanted to love that one. Let's see, what else do I have in fantasy? Oh, The Wolf of Arenaro, the first book in the Chronicles of the Wolf Queen. Apparently they changed the title of the series, although my copy still has the B word on here, and I'm guessing that the publisher maybe did not like that, or people did not receive that well and they changed it. But maybe that's only in the UK, because that's all I've seen so far. The UK editions have been changed to the Wolf Queen. However, K.S. Veloso, first book in this series. Another one that I didn't think I was gonna like. This book, if you're somebody who does not like to read where they tell you everything, very, very little is shown. I mean, so little is shown in this book. It is almost 100% you're getting told from a memory, or you might have 2 seconds of showing something which sparks a memory, or something in the past where the character explains to you where that came from, what that meant to her. This kingdom is on the verge of crumbling, and throughout the course of this tale, we get all of the history of how she became the queen. We find out what's been going on in the meantime. So I don't know that the rest of the series is going to continue with the tale and not show. I feel like we got we brought up to speed. We were sat down at the hearth. We had a good stiff drink in our hands, and we were brought up to speed on everything that had happened. Kind of like when you have a season 2 of a show come out on Netflix and they spend like 10 minutes like previously on, and you just get all the highlights of all the important things. That's how I felt this was, but it was actually done really well. Like I said, I started it, I didn't think I was gonna like it, but it really grew on me and I really loved it. I read this one super fast because it was just really, really a great story. It was different. I'm excited to see what's gonna happen. I am a little confused about the main character. She's supposed to be this hardcore queen, but yet we're privy to her innermost thoughts, and she seems kind of weak to me. Like, I don't know. I thought that, but then again, if I think about how it ended, I mean, what she was weak about, I mean, I don't know. It kind of turned, you guys, you have to read this book. I don't want to tell you any more than that, because it will totally spoil the entire story if I explain to you why I think maybe she wasn't weak after all. It's not that she wasn't weak. Maybe she wasn't wrong to be weak about that. I don't know. If you have read The Wolf of Arenaro, let's chat. Find me. All of my links are in the description below. Is that all of my fantasy? I think that is all of my fantasy. Oh, no, it is not all of my fantasy. I did read The High King's Tomb by Kristen Britton, which is book 3 in her Green Rider series. There is a live show that I'll have linked below where I'll talk with Feeny Reads and Miss Richards Reads about this story. It is spoiler filled for the most part, so if you haven't read it, definitely don't watch it. I love this book. It redeemed the series for me. Just a quick recap. The first book started off a little shaky, but I grew to absolutely love it. The second book, I kind of hated. And I decided to give it one more book, and I'm so glad I did, because the third book was more like the first book, where I fell in love with it. Absolutely loved the third book, and I cannot wait to read the fourth book. And then the last fantasy book that I read this month is Song of Echoes, which is the first book in the epic fantasy series by R.E. Palmer. I am very undecided on this book. As I stated, I'm an emotion-based reader. I generally know fairly quickly how I feel about a book. I did not love this one. I can't tell how I feel about it because it was a 430-page beginning to a story. There was no middle, there was no end. It was a beginning, it was an introduction. I just feel this, at least this first book, I haven't gotten into the second book yet, but it feels like it just cut off, and it was very slow paced. It was a very slow burn to not really get anywhere. So I'm just undecided on that one, at least at time of filming. But by the time you see this, maybe I'll have that sorted and have a review up where you guys can check that out on Goodreads. Now, let's talk about science fiction. Let's talk about my reread of Middle Game by Shauna Maguire. I reread this because the next book in the Alchemical Journeys comes out in May, Seasonal Fears. If I let rereads count toward being my favorite book of the month, this one would win, because this book, when you hear about tags and they have a prompt about a book that makes you feel like you've come home, that is this book to me. I believe Shauna Maguire wrote this book to be reread because it is so much better on reread. Like, I loved it the first time I read it. I didn't understand a lot of it until way deep inside, which is okay because there's other things that are going on that I loved about it. The found family trope, the twin trope, I loved that. I loved the mystery. I loved their dynamic, their relationship, and how it developed, and all of the things that were happening to them as they were growing up. But as far as the alchemical, the magic that was happening, I didn't understand a lot of it. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to. And you get all of that explained, and you get it explained in a way that is definitely easy for you to understand and comprehend. When I reread it, I knew all of that. I had all of that going in, so it just made it a delight to read and see all of these characters do all of the things that they do. They're all playing the long game with their schemes. It was even more endearing to read about the brother and sister, Roger and Dodger. And I know some of you out there have said you didn't read this book because you thought their names were stupid. Just give it 3 chapters. The name thing gets explained, and it is fantastic. I love this book so much. I can't wait to read Seasonal Fears and see where it's going to go from there. I have zero expectations other than expecting to love it. Now let's talk horror. We're going to start with Stephen Graham Jones. I finished the collection 3 Miles Past. It has 3 of his novellas in it. I only loved one. I did not like the other 2. One was just, there's an element with dogs that I could not get past. I could not enjoy. I couldn't even appreciate the writing of it because that just affected me. And then one was just boring and really weird. And weird horror is not something I really like. I like horror that could be real, or it's paranormal, supernatural. Like, I am into that, but stuff that's just way out there in left field, like, So I actually would not recommend this collection to anybody. If there's a way you could get a hold of the middle story, I would say go for that one. It was terrifying, and I absolutely love that. But other than that, I know I always say try an author's shorter fiction just to get a taste test of if you're going to enjoy their art of storytelling. I would not ever in a million years tell anybody to start with that collection with Stephen Graham Jones. Also in the horror genre, I read Alma Katsu's newest release, The Fervor. NetGalley was awesome enough to approve me for the ARC for that one, and I read this one in 2 sittings. It's a historical horror that takes place during World War II, and it shines a very bright spotlight on the American treatment of the Japanese during World War II. If you were Asian, you were not trusted. And what the Americans did is they put the Japanese people in internment camps, meaning prison camps. It was horrible, and they would just grab anybody that looked Asian. They didn't even bother to look into were they even actually Japanese. It was horrible. It was a very fascinating story. You guys know I love horror that stems from true events. This did not disappoint. I won't spend any more time here on it because I did do a dedicated review that I'm going to have up here in the cards, also linked down in the description, so check that out. And let's get into thriller. Let's talk about The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This was the April pick of the month for the Wine and Crime book club. That is a thriller true crime book club that I started. Basically, if a murder is involved, it qualifies to be a pick. This one actually turned out to be a supernatural true crime story. Shay is a true crime blogger. That's what she does by night. By day, she works in a medical office, and through her day job, she meets Beth Greer, who back in 1977 was acquitted of the lady killer murders. Shay had actually looked into that case here and there. She had written about it on her blog. She took a chance to ask Beth if she could interview her, and Beth said yes. For the first time in 30-40 years, she's agreed to do an interview about that case, and that is what the premise and story of this is. But that supernatural element is snuck in there. There's something about Beth Greer's mansion, and oh my gosh, so creepy, so creepy. I love this book. I loved Simone St. James' writing style. I cannot wait to read more by her. And then also in that crime thriller genre, I read the second book in Queeve MacDonald's The Dublin trilogy. I read The Day That Never Comes. I just love this series. I love everything I've read by Queeve MacDonald so far, and that's 4 books. He's got his paranormal thriller series, which is The Stranger Times. I'll put the link up for that review of that series. And then this one is crime thriller series. And this one, our characters from the first book are back, and they have decided to go into business for themselves. They're going to be private investigators, except they need a license, which they do not have. They're trying to get one, but the guy who's gonna front the money, Bunny McGarry, has gone missing. While we're trying to find Bunny, Paul gets his first case, but the client refuses to give her name. She just tells Paul that she wants him to follow the guy she's having an affair with to make sure he is not cheating on her with his wife. And if he can prove that, she'll give him £4,000. So it's not your typical case. Again, Queeve MacDonald has so much humor mixed in with this mystery. I cannot wait to read the next one and see what's going to happen next. My friend Ev, who got me turned on to this author, she told me about a podcast that has short stories that go along with the Dublin trilogy called The Bunny Cast, and it is on Audible. I couldn't get it to work on Audible for some reason. It is supposed to be free, but I went and just switched over to Apple Podcasts, and you can find it there, and it's called The Bunny Cast, and it's Bunny Cast is one word, and it's all about our favorite Bunny McGarry. I can never get enough of him. And then the last book that I read this month is Zora Neale Hurston's Syrup on the Swanny. I love the story. I rank it as number 3 of my list of favorites by Zora Neale Hurston. Their Eyes Were Watching God is still number 1. Moses Man of the Mountain is still a close number 2. This one's next. It is a love story. It's a very authentic love story. And I know I hate the miscommunication trope, and that is not really how I would describe this. It's not that they miscommunicate, it's that they don't communicate. They each want something from the other, but they just want that other person to just magically figure it out on their own. And they both love each other so very much, but the other one just doesn't quite pick up on that. And you're cheering for both of them throughout the whole way, and they're each fighting for each other. And it's a beautiful story. It's so authentic. It's just, this is real life. Zora Neale Hurston, she was an anthropologist as well as an author. She studied people. She studied their lives. And she just really gets to the heart of the matter when she writes about people. Just unmatched, unmatched. Now, as far as what was my favorite read of the month? I think I'm gonna have to go with my boy John Gwynne, The Hunger of the Gods. I mean, I did love The City of Brass, but I didn't start out loving it. Same with The Wolf of Arenaro. I loved it, but I didn't start out loving it. I love this one start to finish. Cannot wait for book 3. John Gwynne has just really... That man just has this little bookworm's heart in the palm of his hand. What all did you read for the month of April? What was your favorite read of the month? I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one.